So today is day 3 of our 30 days of PM challenge. It's a challenge, but it's more a learning experience to understand more about product management in general. I am a practicing PM. My day job is basically building products for a B2B company, and this is my attempt at 30 days of PM, trying to learn from the resource and content from crew work and go from there and probably share learnings along the way and create content. So yeah, that's it. So let's get started with day 3 of 30 days of PM, and here we have product thinking, ship values rather than features. Interesting way to put it. And for us to look at product thinking, as to get started with product thinking, the first thing to look at is what is a product in general, right? So I think we have a pretty good definition here and also a diagram that tells us what is a product, where does it lie, and what does it do. A product essentially is at the center of all things that a product manager does, and for example a product focused organization does. At center of it all is the product that you are trying to sell. This product can be a software product in most cases in startups. As you see, it can also be hardware. I mean, my laptop here is a product that I use that solves a problem for me. I can surf the internet, reach out to people, and learn new things. Also, the pen I use to write my notes is also a product. Anything that solves a problem and makes my job easier or my life easier can be termed as a product. Uh, the lighting that we have, the software that I'm using to live stream is also a product in some ways. So anything that essentially gets things done for you, things that you want to do or perform, and helps you achieve those goals and helps you get things done, is essentially a product. And a product is built for users and people who want to consume or have a problem that the product solves. It also has a business value, as also a business proposition in some ways, where you can essentially make a living out of it, sell the product for some cost and earn money on that and grow and build market from there and join the market essentially. The technology piece changes. It can be hardware, it can be software, it can be multiple things as a product. But yeah, essentially for you to look at product thinking to begin with, you also need to look at what essentially is a product, right? And that essentially defines anything that gets the job done and brings value and solves any problem that you have, can be termed as a product. It's very wide and vague, and it is supposed to be like that because as a product manager, your job role changes, like we've seen in day 2 and day 1 and previous days as well, and from the resources that we've seen. But yeah, that how is the job and the dynamic nature of it all to begin with. But let's get going. And then we start with what is product thinking all about. I mean, it's pretty vague. Again, if you look at just talking about product thinking, I'm always thinking about something, and just thinking about a product, is that, does that mean I'm doing product thinking? But in a way, for you to look at product thinking is how do you build the product, right? And how do you bring value out of the product. There will always be features that you want to build and things that you want to create for users. You want to probably create another social media app or have a marketplace for users. But here, with product thinking, what you're essentially trying to do is look at ways of how you can bring in more value. You have a problem that you have identified, and you're observing an audience or a set of users, and it's not just a single user who is facing the problem, not just you. I mean, it in most cases begins like with a problem that you are already facing in your day-to-day job or life, and it grows from there, and you see other people also facing a similar problem, and you try to solve for it and grow from there. And the process of how you try to solve the problem and build a product out of it is in simple ways can be termed as product thinking. So here we have another diagram which tells us about product thinking, where you have users who have a problem, and you have business, and you have a solution in mind that probably has the potential to become a business eventually. And that is where product thinking comes in, where You try to solve the problem, but also look at try to build a solution and also make business sense out of it, right? So that essentially is what product thinking is. And I think we also have other resources around product thinking that are very popular and have been shared by multiple people. But I think I found this one video where product thinking or product sense is talked by Shreyash, who is like a legendary PM, very renowned PM in the product management space, and he has worked in multiple top organizations like Google, Stripe, and built products and scaled products for them. And here he talks about where does this thing come from, right? Where does the product sense or the ability to have product thinking come from? And let's look at it and see what he has to say about it.
I did not set out to be, interested in philosophy or even kind of share learnings that sound like life philosophy. I just had a strong innate interest in building successful products and doing all the things that are required to build successful products. But what that led me to is needing to, wanting to, getting excited to understand how human beings think and how they feel. To be highly successful as a product person, you must understand how human beings think and feel because it permeates everything that you do. It permeates how to sell to customers, it permeates what will resonate for users, how will users react to this feature, how do you convince engineers to do a certain thing, how do you influence designers, how do you deal with disagreements. Understand, all of this is about understanding people and then having the courage to take certain actions based on that understanding. So that was my focus. And as I grew my understanding of this, of how do people think, how do they feel, how do they get influenced, now you end up in a more kind of, let's call it, philosophical point of view because you understand that underlying the principles are very simple. They're not easy, but they're very simple. And that if you understand those principles, you truly understand them. Not like I read it in a book and I memorized it and I can summarize it and I can curate it in a tweet thread. No, no, no. Understand here and here in your gut. Once you understand how human beings think, that can sound like philosophy. And to some people, it sounds very theoretical, but it's not. It's actually very practical because ultimately you are trying to influence people to do a certain thing. And so for me, that was my journey. And I think this is actually the journey for many product people who kind of end up in this kind of philosophical point of view, but that was never the starting point. The starting point was what products do I build and how do I make them successful?
Yep, pretty valid advice here. I mean, there's no silver bullet to it where you can just read a course or a book and it gives you all the answers about what product sense or product thinking is. Even this article doesn't do justice to the whole product sense or product thinking, so to say. But yeah, it's a fair attempt as to explaining what product thinking is and how to deal with that. But yeah, here Shreyash mentions a very important thing about understanding how humans think and how they behave and what sort of things are they looking to solve for, and then having the courage to build these things and make them successful eventually. So yeah, you have the problem and the solution and you're trying to essentially bring and solve both of them and closing the loop on them and making things that are successful and valuable to users and make their lives easier in a simple way. But yeah, it's more philosophical as you dive deeper into it because it's essentially understanding human behavior, looking at ways to solve problems that are more intuitive and better. There will always be a better way to build a product or build a specific feature, but you the ability to at least think about how do you go about solving this problem, what are the potential ways to look at it, is essentially what product thinking boils down to. But why do we need it? So yeah, I think what users need, what business ships, and the gap between that. So the X and the Y, you have a gap between this. You find a problem that you're facing, you also find other people who are facing the same problem. You have a potential to build a business out of it, or and then close the gap and make it better. And the closer the gap is, the better the product market fit is. This is another term, product market fit, which essentially starts when you are building a new product from 0 to 1. It's essentially trying to build it iterate and build a solution. For example, the guys at Zepto, a simple example would be, before creating the whole application and web interface that they have, and all the supply chain and the logistics of uh, and the scale of it, it essentially started from just a WhatsApp group within their society and within their colony, and it grew from there. From the WhatsApp group, it became like a website, and it grew from there, and then they had funding and the rapid growth that they saw. So that is how it goes in iterations. And the way to look at it is, if you have great product thinking, the solution that you come up with will have incremental updates, and will also have audience that are interested in it, right? So probably a good way to look at, if you are great at product thinking, is just figuring out or thinking of a problem that you see daily and you feel like, and doing some research around it. If other people are also facing a similar problem, try to build the simplest solution that you can think of. Build an MVP. An MVP is also a term. I mean, minimum viable product is, you shouldn't just target like building an MVP, but it also has to have its uniqueness in terms of the minimum lovable product, right? There is this term that floats around, that what is building an MVP is easy. You build a WhatsApp group. There has to be, but there is some ingredient, the magic that happens within it. It can be the people, it can be the technology, or just the way it is presented, right? It can be that secret ingredient which turns the product from just being a product, like thousands of product we use on a daily basis. The the differentiation or the unique piece in that is where your product thinking shines, and that is what will scale your product and build not just an MVP, but also a minimum lovable product. There are great insights on the internet. I found one resource from Stoa. They have this newsletter, and they talk about this minimum lovable product here. Not just building an MVP, but making sure the product is also loved. And because you have beta launches, you have alpha launches, but at the end of the day, every launch is official and to the public, and you can't just make cut corners in just calling it a beta and not delivering features, because it won't have retention built into the product and scale from there on. So this article gives a very good analogy of how to think about minimum viable products and minimum lovable products, and product thinking as a whole, right? It's not just, it's about thinking about how humans perceive things and how they would like solutions to be built, and the best way to build them. But it's also a lot about first order thinking and second order thinking, and the effects of your actions, right, on a specific feature that is building features. And thinking of product ideas is very easy, but scaling it from there on becomes harder and harder. Because, for example, here they have given an example of pizza. No one likes a burnt pizza. And similarly, for us, you can start from the minimum, start from the basics and grow from there, but that itself is not enough to scale, or scale the product and have, I mean, establish your product thing. It has to keep growing. It is an incremental loop, and you have to think about trying the minimum lovable product here, where they give an example of Cred. They talk about Flappy Bird and why these specific products have their audience, and the reason why they have such a large audience, and why they became viral or are successful. Cred, not really sure if it's successful right now, based on its valuation, but yeah, it's something. They have some segmentation or target audience that they have attracted to, me being one of those. But yeah, there are multiple ways of thinking about minimum viable products and minimum lovable products, and I think this article does a great job of explaining that, right? So to make sure that the users are hooked from day one, there has to be a reason for the user to come back to, I mean, it can be anything. It can be this live stream as well. If you find value, you will come back, and if you like the content that is being delivered, but yeah, it scales from there. And uh, this live streams and these videos are also a way for me to experiment on product thinking in terms of content, or in terms of just growing my understanding of product management as a professional. But yeah, I think this is about why and talking about product market fit. And then you look at the product thinking process, which is essentially they've made it very simple, but it's not as simple as you think. It starts from a problem for sure. You get an idea, you you probably hear some insight online, or look at look through some ideas during your research and go from there. But in general, it starts from a problem statement that you figure out or have come across and go from there. And you have an opportunity that you see there is a way for you to enter the market and go from there, and then you start iterating on the solution. And the solution part is where the MVP and the MLP phase comes into play. And there are frameworks to multiple ways to look at frameworks. I think they've talked about the mom test and also the jobs to be done framework, and look at market research and things around that. But in essence, product thinking is essentially understanding a way to deliver or build something that brings value and makes the user hooked to what you're building and what they've seen or have experienced from day one, and go from there. So yeah, I think in the solution phase there are multiple things to consider. It's not just uh, building a solution or building a product, making it live, and you will have the audience. You will have to promote it, market it, talk to users, get feedback. um, if there is churn, if there are new users, onboard them, make them use the platform, make them understand how it can bring value. And it a lot of these things have to be self-service and not necessarily come from the user themselves. And it should be self-explanatory in that way, where just logging into the platform in a software sense should give users the ability to figure out how to get the job done. uh, and this comes with building and iterating multiple times. It's not that your first product will be successful. It can be if you follow the insights here and all the resources that are tagged, but that and just theory is not enough. You'll have to do practical stuff and go from there. But yeah, I think this is a good way, and I think we have a few resources, but I think there could have been a lot more resources and a lot more content just around product thinking. I think one of the resources was this article, which which has which probably has all the same details that are in the Substack issue for here. But yeah, I think there are features, and these features combine together to build a product. If you're building like a huge product that will be used by Fortune 500 companies, there will be multiple features, multiple segments that you as a product manager will be responsible for a few set of features to make them grow, make them more usable, make them more cohesive and user friendly to the user, and scale it further. And in some cases it might just be that a single feature is your product, but as you grow, as the product grows, it adds features, it adds more based on the feedback and the feedback loops that you have, and grows into a much bigger product from just the building blocks to an actual house that can solve multiple, or I mean it can solve one problem but do it very well. And yeah, the product, these are a few heuristics to consider when thinking about product thinking and product science in general. The product should have minimum viable quality. Yeah, so this is where the minimum lovable product concept also comes in. It's not just building a website and having a button on it and calling it an MVP. It should deliver value even though it's just an MVP. The product should have confidence and common sense. Just because it's the first version of your product, it should actually have a core problem that is being solved and do it much better than competitors for you to even stand a chance at having a pie of the market, right? And the product should anticipate users needs. Yeah, you have to predict. It's not always uh, that you will get feedback. People are busy, they have their own jobs and things to do. But you also have, based on your understanding and your research during the problem and observation phase, and eventually building the solution phase, have anticipate user needs and what might be next that they might ask or want to have as part of your product. And should be focused on users goals. Pretty straightforward, pretty important. And you have to be customer obsessed here. I mean, just like Amazon, everything for the customers, and in making their lives easier. All companies have different values, but one of the key values is always thinking about the customer and having customers in mind when building solutions. And the product should always be available when a user needs it. That's not a very big problem these days with the scale and the flexibility and the access to resources we have both in hardware and software terms. But yeah, I think that's a pretty standard part of your minimal viable product and minimum viable quality of the product and what is it is trying to build. But yeah, I think we have a few other resources from Shreyas here on talking about what is product thinking and how do you. There is this term project thinking. There are project managers and there are also product managers, and this essentially explains how they differ and how the thinking in both these roles differ, right? The product role essentially and the product sense and product thinking mostly looks at the why is this a problem, what are ways to solve it, what else can we do to solve it, and how do we do it, right? The how part is common between both project and product because project has to allocate the right resources to build and scale the product, but it's also the responsibility or the understanding of your user and how the product thinking goes from there. But yeah, I think other few resources around product sense if you are interested is from Cred. So Cred has this Cred Curious sessions where Shreyash has conducted a webinar, a 2 hour long webinar, just explaining product sense and giving various examples and scenarios of how to look at product management and product sense in general. And here he is explaining about Spotify's wrapped concept and how that essentially brings, that is part of the year where everyone is sharing their product and it helps in product discovery where users who are not familiar with Spotify will see these stories and images being shared across social media and will be tempted or prompted, at least be interested in trying to take a look at Spotify, for example. And there are multiple questions here. You also have the webinar here talking about the things that are part of this Twitter thread. But yeah, do check this out. I think uh, we could probably see much more here in terms of this. In a sense, there is product thinking and there is MVP that was covered primarily here, but just MVP can be its own thing and product thinking can be much longer as a concept. But yeah, I think these are a few resources. You can look at this article from Stoa and also look at this webinar and just follow him on his socials and you'll have all the details you need. But yeah, I think that covers it for product thinking. Um, it's not like a prioritization framework that you follow these 5 steps, not like a lead coding problem that you can solve just having 5 steps and yeah, voila, you have like a successful product and you have like the best product thinking capabilities. It's much more nuanced, it's much more philosophical, as Shreyas told us, but it's essentially understanding human behavior, understanding what they actually need. It's much easier to talk about it. I was Because there are multiple levers you need to balance and multiple things that you have to take into account. But yeah, product thinking is a never ending thing. You always learn, explore, gain insight and form your opinions and look at ways of how you can look at building and improving your products if you have like a new product to build, or also even if you're looking at scaling your existing product and making it better than what it is. But yeah, that's essentially it on the product thinking and product sense side. We'll look at what we have in store from the 30 days of PM tomorrow and take it from there. But yeah, that's uh, that's it for today and this live stream. It will be available after this ends, and you can revise, or if you have other things to share, happy to look at those on my Twitter. And our Twitter is essentially nonsense. This is where we run all of our product management and product marketing details and talk about things around the product PM space. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. Do follow us on Twitter and see you soon. See you tomorrow. Bye.